voices. This is awesome. Just got about a minute before we're going to get started, so I want to make sure everybody knows where the bathrooms are. They are out this door directly to the left. So you might want to hit those up before we get started. Also, if you would like something to drink, we've got some, do you say it LaCroix? 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 So, such a sampling of how to pronounce the fuzzy water. But we have fuzzy water in the refrigerator. There are tons of reserved seats up front, and those are for the students. And I know the students are all hiding in the back because they're probably still working on their slides or practicing their presentations, but time's up. You've had enough time to practice. So all students to the front and in your seats. Yes. And we have more chairs, obviously, but students, come. Come. And I purposefully put more chairs up here as well. TAs, that note goes to you guys too. All right. Yeah. This is working out just as timed. I don't know if you know this about me. I'm really into time. It's a contract? Oh, it's a capitalist construct. But I think of it also as a gift. If we're generous with our time, that's a huge gift, right? So if it's a capitalist construct, the more time that we give to other people, we're subverting capitalism. Right? Amazing. Well, it's on the live stream, so it'll be immortalized. Welcome to SFPC, everybody. For how many people here is it their first time coming to SFPC? Oh, wow, cool, yay! Welcome. The School for Poetic Computation was founded in 2013. We've existed in a couple of spaces. This is our current home. What else can we tell you about the home that's important? Again, just water, hydrate, that's important. Restrooms, that's important. But today is a really cool day because what we do is we welcome the new class. And our new session is the session of fall 2019. Yes. We welcome anywhere from about 12 to 17 students a semester where they spend 10 weeks of their life living and learning with us. And it's every day. It's a very intense schedule. So from 10 in the morning to 1, they're going to have classes. The classes all focus on different subjects. That's Monday through Friday that they're going to be in class. We do classes about visual coding, like open frameworks, which Zach is going to teach. Then I think on Tuesday we have critical theory with American artists. And then on Wednesday we're going to do electronics and hardware, and that's with CWT right there. Hi, guys. And then on Thursday, we're going to have a few teachers this semester teaching us code poetry, which is coding, but with language. So the outcome is going to be more text-based. And this semester we have Todd Anderson, Melanie Hoff, and Fernando Ramallo, and Stefan Pelican right there is going to be our TA. So that's Stefan. You guys are going to meet them all later as well. And then on Friday, we're going to switch up. We're going to have a few teachers. I think Taeyun is doing a really interesting class this semester for the first time called Drawing, where he's going to help everyone develop a practice of illustrating and drawing out your, am I getting this right? Drawing out your practice. He's in the back over there by the t-shirts if you guys, you'll notice he always wears wonderful shirts, and that's because he's done a wonderful job illustrating his practice and his thoughts with this wonderful graphic style that you will find permeated all over SFPC, which we're very lucky. And then Celine Katzman is going to be working with everyone to develop your artist profiles, and I'm going to be working with you guys to develop the final showcase. So at the beginning, we have the salon and the Meet the Students events, but at the very end, we hope that you come back and visit us again towards the end of our semester, which is going to be at the end of November, beginning of December. We're going to have the student showcase, and we'll start announcing that very soon. But when you come back for the student showcase, these guys are also going to give another presentation, a short presentation about their time at the school and what they've learned, and then also what they're excited about carrying forward after the school ends. I know it's sad for me to say that right now. We don't want to focus on that. And then they're also going to show a lot of the works that they made during class. So it's really special to be able to see that bookend. So without further ado, I don't think that I have anything more to add. Tayun, is there anything I should add? All right, I'm good. So then we'll get started, and our first presenter is going to be Allison.
Hello. Hi. Hi. Oh, sorry. Hold it. Hi. Okay, let's begin. I'm Allison. I'm going to talk about my ideas and my questions. Some pics of me, very cute. Some pretty things that I have made that I'm not going to talk about, but I'm showing you for clout. Cool. I'm a designer by training, but I consider the foundations of my work to be rooted in the studies of care and care work and care ethics. So when I say care work, I'm referring specifically to the very racialized and feminized body of labor that is critically undervalued and underpaid, but that sustains all life. That's very critical to the act of living. And so in examining the geographies of care, I've also been able to explore kind of broader geopolitical themes around migration, displacement, diaspora, and I believe that there is nothing more urgent and more intimate than the act of caring for other people. So to quote a professor who introduced me to this body of work, no aspects of our identity exist in isolation. We are relational beings. So to me, violence is all about exploiting those ties, whereas care is about nurturing them. And I love this quote from Saidiya Hartman: "Care is the antidote to violence." Cool. So pretty early on, building off of that, I became very interested in abolition work, and specifically the role that data and technology plays in sort of shaping the carceral state. So that's what I spent most of 2017 researching. And one of my goals was to help technologists sort of reframe how we think about data, less as a reflection of empirical reality, but more as a political agent that actively shapes reality. And so this work pulls really heavily from the tradition of Black feminist thought that I think is very foundational to all liberation work. And I think the concepts of abolition found here extend to all types of institutional violence, even beyond incarceration. So on that note, currently I work at a startup in Oakland, California, where I research and design technologies to help support low-income workers. And over the past year, I've spent a lot of time speaking to poverty wage workers and families across the U.S. For whom their insolvency has really foreclosed any sense of opportunity or mobility. And so I've gotten really interested in this concept of precarity, which is the idea that because of forces like racial capitalism, the climate crisis, globalization, nothing about our livelihoods is secure. So everything from our basic needs like housing, food, and water to things like our citizenship, our freedom, our dignity, and ultimately the right to a livable life. And so in this sense, we can think of precarity as a form of material violence. What is the trauma that is induced when you are forced to live in a constant state of precarity, and when your sense of belonging has been eroded and your right to existence has been threatened? These are some questions that keep me up at night. And so these themes are really personal and have really come full circle for me. When my dad immigrated to the United States, he was like maybe 18 or 19, and he had no degree or anything. He worked actually as an unpaid domestic worker, care worker specifically, in Atherton, California, at a wealthy person's house. And if anyone knows about Atherton, it's basically where a bunch of really rich tech CEOs live. And so my dad was like one of the domestic care workers for those people. And I think, like my dad, people who have been kind of like declared this like racialized or abject other by the state, their existence has always been precarious in some way. It's not new. And I feel like this deep sense of irony and urgency that I am now a tech worker 40 years later, who has worked at a number of the companies in Silicon Valley who are known every day in the news now for causing harm to communities, especially those that are low income and non-white. And so in the spirit of contending with this personal truth head-on, I've come here to SFPC, guided by the idea that we have a critical responsibility to build more reparative and more caring relationships with tech and also with each other. And as a student, I'm a firm believer that the most important learning experiences in life will be some kind of unlearning, right? So unlearning what you thought you knew about the world and about people different from you, and trying to bend your spirit towards a shared conviction or goal you previously thought was impossible. So I'm trying to do that with all of you and invite you into the dialogue. Final thoughts, I want to end with this. So there's a poet and novelist that I love named Renee Gladman. She does these things called prose architectures, where it's written words kind of morphed into this like geographical sketch of a city. And she has this beautiful quote that I'll leave you all with. "The city of the future will be a drawing." The end. That's my info.
Thank you so much. All right, Danny, are you ready? Just make sure you speak into the mic so all the people on the live stream can hear you. Think of Gia.
Could you let me know at 3 minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Danny Garfield. This is a photo of me when I was about 15. And it's my first exposure to community art spaces in the crust punk houses of Philadelphia. And although I didn't exactly fit in, as you can see, it was my first exposure to gathering people around art outside of an institution, and it's definitely fundamental to why I'm here today. So then I went off to school and I studied physics, and I was always split between art and science, and the merging of the two always felt fake and unsatisfactory to me. This is a mirror from a telescope that I worked on. So outside of school, I was making films. These are some clips from Laserman 3, The Last Blast, which is my first project exploring technology. It's about a group of people who, when they hear about their impending doom from an incoming comet, they connect on Craigslist and decide to upload their brains to a computer through a USB port. And it's really about the dumbness and inability of tech to honor our experiences, which is best shown in the reorienting the USB cable in order to upload your consciousness. And then I was lucky enough to get a grant to go to China to make a film about the Wushipu oil painting village, where these painters mechanically churn out copies by hand of these Dutch masters of Van Goghs to sell to Olive Gardens and waiting rooms around the world, just working tirelessly to erase themselves from their work. And this really got me interested in the materials and labors behind technology and who is shown and who's erased. Then I went to work at a VR production company, which was a disappointing experience. What I thought was this new medium to explore stories really just felt like a tool for powerful people to posture as artists and do-gooders, which sort of culminated as me playing Melissa in the Facebook Spaces promotional video, which then cartoon Mark Zuckerberg went on to visit Puerto Rico and the devastation from Hurricane Maria. More lately, I've been exploring how to create happenings through technology and what are the contexts under which people have meaningful experiences through it. 1 year ago today, I organized the NYC Monkey Owners Meetup, an attempt to manifest a monkey into my life through posting. Other works that I've been doing lately, I was an artist in residence at the Famous Chimps Inbox Gallery, where I delivered a 4-part multimedia novella to people's emails. This is excerpts from a talk I gave recently about the meme 30 to 50 feral hogs, and the role as avatars for climate change. So here at SFPC, I think I'm ready to finally meaningfully combine science and art, realizing how the patterns and tendencies of particles like atoms coming together even are contextual forces, and how paying attention to context even on those small scales gives us an ability to present care and look at the histories of everything around us on all scales and in all settings. And computers, with their ability to manipulate electrons and things on tiny scales, I think present our best tool for making that connection known. So thank you very much for listening, and come chat with me.
Thank you, sir. And next we have Esther. Yay.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Esther, and for all the non-French speaking person, I said hi, my name is Esther. I'm from France, but I'm not from Paris. I don't live in Paris, and it's kind of complicated, but because when you look for France in Google Image, you find directly Eiffel Tower's pictures, and we don't all live on the Eiffel Tower. I'm actually from Clermont-Ferrand, which is a smaller city in the center of France, where it is known for three main things: having a black cathedral that isn't black because it is dirty, hosting the Michelin headquarters, the tire company, and also having volcanoes, not non-active, of course. So if we rewind a little bit, I started with a 2-year vocational degrees in space design. And what people usually do after a 2-year vocational degree in space design is usually go to architectural school or to a master's degree in space design and then start working. What I did is that I did a master's degree in graphic design. And what people usually do after a master's degree in graphic design is start working. But what I did is I did a second master's degree, this time in interactive media. And what people usually do after a master's degree in interactive media is start working. But what I did is that I applied at SFPC to be a student here. And what usually people do after SFPC is quit their jobs. But but as I don't have a job, I'm thinking about maybe starting working. Or maybe keep going up in the research program, or maybe do both. So anyway, this years pass led me to actually build my own path and my own experience, but also led me eventually to always and constantly question my legitimacy as an artist, as a designer, but as a more global person who creates things. So who am I? To answer this question, I decided to take my bio, the bio I did for SFPC, and I highlighted some things. But I realized yesterday when I did my slides that I missed something very important to me, is that my practice is based on collaborations and all kind of collaborations. So I did a thesis, which was about how can the graphic designer can help the web users to find interest in their metadata in order to manage them easier. So I did like a big mind mappings, also write a thesis about that and about the position of the graphic designer and why there are not more graphic designers wondering about the question of metadata, because they're supposed to be a way to information to people, and in the sense that they lay out things together. So this led me to create a board game that I did with a board game association in order to better understand how the data are transferred from one company to one company. I also did a video game, and I wanted to go back to printed materials because I did a graphic design studies, and I'm really interested in the combination of graphic design and programming language. So I did this Craigslist poem generator where I basically created poems from Craigslist, and here are some parts of it. Then I went deeper in the art of paper and the use of paper. And I did with 2 classmates an installation at the Biennale of Design of Saint-Étienne, where we used 15 thermal printer to print continuously the website of a newspaper. And we also showcased the new layout we thought about for the newspaper in order to recreate a link between the reader and to the and with the paper. Let's see. So we also did a small part where people could print their own newspaper. So it was very funny and also very interesting to know that designing the outside is very important, but designing the inside of the installation is harder. I did a second thesis, second master's degree, so I did also a second graduate diploma, where I keep digging into the world of data and the world of metadata, and I created 3 installations, and here is my web history of 1 year. And yeah, what I'm going to do at SFPC, I don't know yet, but it will probably be related to paper or to metadata. And merci.
Don't forget to talk to Gia.
Oh, after me?
Oh, no,
Oh.
just use the mic.
Oh, okay. Hello. So I'm Francisco. Nice to meet everybody. So I am super into video games and always have been. I got a Game Boy when I was 4 and have been playing games ever since. One of the big reasons that I love video games is that they let me sort of avoid real life and all the messiness and complexity and uncomfortableness of real life, and letting me escape into this like more simplified world with easier to understand rules that I can exploit and then for win and profit. And so I have been doing that. I think that's been like a big theme in my life. So I started with video games, but then I went into math, which is this other world that you can, with like simple rules that you can string together into complex things and then do well on tests, and then your teachers reward you. And then I translated that into computer engineering and continued to do well with that. And that culminated into I've been working at Google for the last 2 years, and it was like my dream job, and I was like, this is like what I've been working for my entire life, and like I feel like I finally won, and I was promised all this like happiness and security and good things, and like I don't have to be sad anymore. Not the case. I actually was like, it was not a good feeling. And I was like, why is that? I like went to therapy, I started free writing, I did a lot of like meditation to try to like make myself like it and be like, no dude, your life is great. You're a cishet white person and you like have this amazing job. Like you're good, you should be happy. But no, I kept coming back to this truth that I didn't like the work, and that I also had this feeling of like, maybe maybe I'm doing more harm than help. And so I had this like existential crisis, and from that I started making games mostly, and also like thinking about those like weird, tough, uncomfortable questions like, who am I? What is my role? Like, what is my identity? What do I like? What do I believe? Like, do I care about my community? Like, what is my community? What is, how do I feel about like material justice and other people? So, and so I started like also like reading books, and I feel very confused right now. And I've been making some games. Here's one that I made about like my high school experience, and here's one about the neighborhood that I was living in Pittsburgh for 3 years. It's weird to look at these and realize that I am like applying all this like binary black-white structural tech thinking and trying to like recreate real life worlds in the digital space. And I don't know why I'm doing that right now, but I am. So I think what I'm interested right now is like exploring like what is play and how to use play to subvert norms and to think about like how we live in real life systems and play in those. I also was doing improv comedy for the last 3 years, and so I think a lot of what I'm interested in is informed by that. I'm very interested in like vulnerability and yourself as a performer, and how to explore vulnerability and use that for human connection and empathy. I also am like very like reactively, or I'm like being very reactionary to being at a hyper-capitalist tech company for a couple of years, and I'm very like into like emotional rawness and exploring like how to not think about things like structurally and more get to like the elemental parts of like angst and also like earnestness and wholesomeness. So yeah, I'm really excited to be at SFPC and like learn from everybody and collaborate with people. It's been really nice to like work on my stuff by myself, but it's gonna be, I think, very. I'm very confused about everything, so I'm just trying to learn about myself and work with other people. So yeah, thank you.
So unfortunately, the next presenter couldn't be here with us today because she's actually teaching female journalists in Mexico City this weekend how to be secure online, which is kind of awesome. But Gia, and I thought maybe we could just take a few seconds and popcorn out things that the students have learned about Gia. She's perfect. She's perfect. Her energy fills a room. Ian? Fair. Yes, Max.
I'm pretty sure that she like orchestrates like a self-replicating multi-country like journalist thing that while attending class.
Yeah. She does.
Yeah.
And it is a nonprofit, and now it's growing from Argentina was the original location, and now Mexico City, and now there's a third location. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the name of this organization is Chicas Poderosas. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, and it's really cool. And she quoted herself as having 3 Gias inside of her. One of the Gias is like a fine artist, and then another Gia is like an arts management person. Oh, I get the mic. And then the third Gia is like community organizing Gia. So I think she's like trying to meld those Gias. She also does like transmedia storytelling. So I think part of one of the things she told us that she was excited about SFPC for was combining all the Gias into like a big super Gia.
Super Gia.
She's already super.
That's true. Does anyone else have any Gia thoughts? Gia thoughts? It's true.
She's like a warm chocolate chip cookie as a human.
She gives really good hugs. Yeah? Oh. Well, hopefully you guys all come back and get to meet Gia in person, and hopefully our tribute captured a bit of her essence. Ian?
That's a difficult one to follow. Hi, I'm Ian. I like to make random things, and sometimes I call them art, sometimes other people call them art as well. And I do that by asking questions. Sometimes those projects provide more questions. Sometimes they might hint at answers. I went to school at University of Southern California, and there I started asking questions. such as how do I take my experience of the computer and bring it into analog photography and talk about light. So taking apart an LCD monitor, taking some lo-fi screenshots, and then thinking about the light produced by the keyboard, the light produced by the monitor, the cables, and kind of creating different photograms and playing with the medium of analog photo and electronics. Also worked with platform structure affecting the style of discourse. So I studied emojis used on GitHub comments, where adding a feature to the platform changed how people interacted on that platform. And you can see within a few months, people just started using emojis a bunch when a button was added. I also thought about taking digital streets and superimposing on Street View cubes of work that people posted on Instagram or Flickr, and also embedding some Foursquare swarm check-ins to kind of give that digital footprint a physical presence. This project's interesting. It no longer works since the Instagram API I was using is definitely taken down. Flickr API is broken, and the Google Maps API requires a paid key. I moved to New York City in 2016, started working here as a software engineer, took a break asking questions, but it soon started again. Was playing with code and did a lot of projects in collaboration. I went to a hackathon called Debug Politics, where with my team, we built this Twitter botnet where you could subscribe your Twitter account to a Markov chain, taking in a fire hose of political tweets and keeping the @mentions and hashtags intact. And we got people to interact with this in weird ways, where the tweet was ambiguous enough, people from both sides of the aisle more or less interacted with it, and it was super strange. Shut that down quickly though, because I didn't know where that would go. And I talked about could a messaging platform features be used against themselves. So another hackathon with Anastasis, a student who previously attended here, we built a Gododify, where you would write a message on Facebook and then the response would be typing forever. People also thought it was funny. It's funny, like a project that takes 2 hours of work gets covered everywhere, but that's the way things work. I was talking about what does a digital relationship look like in print with a friend. So I helped him and Luke Chang and Yoon Lau to take messages from 7 years of their relationship and turn it into a book and also a design studio installation. So I really like making the digital physical. And their story covered the space quite literally. It was a very cool install. And I'm also asking about how do I exist as a digital data footprint. So data mining my own data. And I have data ranging back from 2013 to today, and just kind of chugging along. I printed some of it out. I kind of want to work with this material, maybe not. And I'm asking questions around what makes corporations legitimate. So I started a blockchain startup. Everyone's doing that. We got a good Marxist style. It destructs itself. People didn't really read it. They just saw it and it seemed legit. So they went to the pre-launch party, which this is our made-up CEO. This person does not exist. And that pre-launch party had an app that was like Venmo, and people thought it was real, but it was just a troll. Also working with how strangers can feel close through technology, so moving more into immersive media. The Coin project was also working with immersive media. And Pulse is a project I've been working with Letty on the right. And this is her and her boyfriend demonstrating. So we take in heart rate from the ear sensor, and then we synthesize the heartbeat signal for each participant to listen to while they look into each other's eyes for 3 minutes, to help build understanding without needing to really reach into language and to really bridge huge divides in age and different backgrounds. It's been run 4 times in New York and once in Calcutta, and every time we learn a lot and kind of modify it and think about where it can go next. I'm thinking also about what if walls could tell stories. So I made audio archaeologies with a friend where we recorded ourselves day to day sound, and then we spatialized it in an empty room. So as we moved through the space, we triggered different sounds. So this is both of us sitting on the couch watching our respective TV shows, and we're talking about 2 people living in the same apartment at different times, what their sound experiences, how it might be different, how it might be similar. It's based off a LiDAR tracking system, which is pretty fun to implement. Here are the different cues. And at SFPC, I want to continue asking questions with amazing people. Thank you so much.
I'm sure you can kind of hear the timer go off. We're trying to be respectful of everyone's time. With that, Catherine.
Amazing. Okay. Lauren, can you cue me at 3 minutes, just in case? Hi, my name is Catherine Diemert. Currently, I'm an interdisciplinary illustrator and artist based out of Toronto, Canada. This is what I'm going to talk about, and that kind of boils down into this. But before I go there, I wanted to start with where I came from. So I grew up in a small town called Dundas, Ontario, and both of my parents are artists. So my father is a fine furniture maker who worked as a studio tech and teacher at Sheridan College, and my mother is an interdisciplinary artist, ceramicist, does a whole lot of things. And I show their work here because even though as a child I didn't get it or understand it, curiously, my more recent work I think echoes a lot of this. And in retrospect, it was probably because I could see my parents creating their own work and projects, but as a child, I also wanted to be creating things. So I was always writing and illustrating my own stories, and much of the media I loved back then were worlds that I could explore in my own way. So I wanted to study these texts and learn how I could create these things that I got lost in through these portals of book, screen, controller, and more. And similarly, as a child, I was always surrounded by artwork, but I always had a sense that my parents, as working artists, were striving towards something. And I think in retrospect, I was seeing that quandary of making a living versus supporting your practice play out in front of me. And that actually made me reject the idea of being an artist. And so illustration became attractive to me because of its commercial value. So I studied illustration at college, and I actually really loved it. We talked a lot about the role of illustration, which was to delight, inform, and persuade, as Milton Glaser defines it. And we were encouraged to find our own voice. But a huge part of it was also focused on the commercial value. And so a lot of my work has been practice-based. The other thing I did after school, I knew I was interested in interactive digital media, and so I ended up at a company called Sego Mini in Toronto, and there we made apps and toys for little kids, taking it from concept all the way to the App Store. But around the same time, I was trying to keep up with my own practice, and I felt it was ironic because the path that I chose for its commerciality, but that reason became less and less important to me. And so I had to relearn my own relationship with art making. And one thing that I came upon was collage, and collage is like a process or methodology. So these are some of the works that I've been doing recently. I've also become really interested in taking 2D things into the 3D and then back again. And taking things from traditional mediums into digital mediums and back again as well. And finally, going back to my roots as an illustrator and drawing, I'm interested in drawing as movement and what that looks like. So these are pieces from a recent show that I put on. And so I think all of those things I've been trying to combine and culminate into this idea of making experiences for people and thinking more closely about what I want to share with people and inspire in them. And those are some of the things that I'd like to continue pursuing here. So can I connect meaningfully with people? Can I dream bigger? And in what way is that? So thank you. Leah.
Hello, my name is Leah. I am trained as a computer science major, but I've also just been making art my entire life. These are things I've made. So today I'm going to talk to you about where I came from, and then I'm going to tell you what I've been wondering about. So that is me with my aunt in Natick, Massachusetts, which is a small town outside of Boston. After I grew up, I went to MIT in Boston or in Cambridge as well. This is a mural I painted. I lived in this really cool dorm where you could paint on the walls. It's kind of like an artistic haven for all the weirdos at the school. I also painted on other walls at MIT. And then I moved to Seattle to work in big tech. And then I was like, big tech sucks. And so I painted a mural there, and then I left. Yeah. So I haven't been working for like 3 months and wondering about these questions. How do we teach AI to make art? How do we educate through art? What does music look like? And how do we enable adults to play like children? So the first, how do we teach AI to make art? So I have been working on this project where I took a bunch of images from the WikiArt dataset, which is like this dataset with like 80,000 images of all these paintings across different art styles, and I put them into a GAN, which is a generative adversarial network, and it spit out these images, which are pretty cool. And then I got some help from the SFPC community to help like evaluate them, compare them to human artist-made work, and then wrote a paper, and it got accepted last week. Woo! Yeah. So with regards to AI, I'm interested in computer vision, GANs, the coupling of image with text. Like, for example, if you wanted to generate like an image, but also poetry that describes the image. Video synthesis and body face tracking for like responsive environments. Second, I'm interested in how do we educate with art. I have also been working on illustrating Chinese characters and their meanings. And so I'm interested particularly in like language learning. I'm also interested in educating about current events through art. These are various posters that were made by people in the Hong Kong protests, and the way they communicate visually about a political topic is very interesting. This is a quote from Ekene Ijeoma about making art. He says, "Let's make conversation pieces, not just masterpieces." And this resonates a lot with me because like he's calling for art to not just be aesthetic, but to also be about like a discussion afterwards. And I think this is particularly important when creating political art, because I think like a lot of political art can be very pushy and one-sided, and I really like how he uses the word conversation and about making it like a conversation or a dialogue between the two sides. So again, I'm interested in education, language learning, and art for political action, specifically China, US, and Hong Kong relations. Third, I'm interested in what does music look like? So I'm gonna play you a thing from my friend Aurora of her harmonizing with a fiddle, and I want you to listen to it and try to think about what you see.
My sweet again. My sweet
So when she played that for me, I like immediately had like an immediate like, this is what that sound looks like, and this is what it looked like, where this is like her voice and this is the fiddle, and they're kind of just like spiraling down towards each other and then trying to catch up to with each other, and then they like come to a resolve. And it's really interesting to me how like you can see that in the sound, and like this makes sense from hearing the audio. And I want to kind of like capture that relation, like be able to understand how like audio and visual, they're both kind of like completely different mediums, but they do talk to each other in a way. So yeah, I want to be able to do that with a computer. And I'm interested in real-time generated concert visuals. And yeah, the fourth thing is I'm interested in play. I think adults should play more. That is me. These are play sculptures that were at a museum in Japan. This is a dome I made, which folds up and expands to be really big. And so I'm interested in making playscapes for adults, specifically domes, inflatables, and things that are deployable and packable for public art and enjoyment for everyone. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mark. Yay!
Hello. So, really quickly, I'll just explain where my head was when I first applied to SFPC and what I thought I would make. I'm an architect by training, and I'm working for a firm called Snowhetta, and I was working on a master plan for Ford, specifically on their autonomous vehicle and electric vehicle headquarters. I can't share with you what I made, but I can share with you the literature that I had to read to do this, and it's just terrible. The idea of what makes a innovative campus through these different technologies and quote cutting edge technologies. This is an example, and if you just read some of it, it's just like trying to catch up with the burgeoning app economy and the startup community, and what is innovation. And it's clearly written by an old man who doesn't know what he's talking about, but these words became really interesting to me as these corporatized, fictional, almost hollow by the amount of times they're used, and it gets to what Benjamin Bratton calls kind of illusions to control or suspend the abyss of complexity of what these are actually doing. So that's what I thought I was gonna make. Now I'm confused. I'm gonna talk about my work study position here, which was given to me by Lauren, which I jokingly say is the best title that I've ever been given, and that's space manager. And I've just been questioning, like, what does that even mean? Manager, facilitator, media, as in the plural of medium, as just in our surrounding objects or our environments. And I think that could be pushed further into an idea called collective choreography or choreography. And I'm taking that directly from Libora Kubanik's manifesto on xenofeminism, which is basically saying that the articulation of space is the articulation of us, and how we is articulated in that, and the language of architecture as a vocabulary for collective choreography or the coordinated writing of space. And so I have a collaborative practice, and we make images and furniture and buildings, fake buildings. But I want to share with you like our biggest failure that kind of launched our whole practice together, which is when we both graduated, we missed each other, we missed our friends, and we thought, how do we keep, in a more meaningful way, share what we consume and what we share, and in the media that we share. And it's hard to read, but it explicitly says that the rituals and choreography are kind of essential to having a dinner party. That was 5 years ago, and weirdly enough, that started to resurface after I ended up in the co-working community. I used to work for a firm, or a company called The Wing, which is a social club and co-working space for women. And New York Times aptly described them as doing Instagrammable feminism. And yeah, that idea of subscribing to people, but also to subscribing to a brand of a desired image, and in the end not really even being inclusive. And I couldn't help but see this sort of weaponizing of aesthetic for capital interest, specifically conflating aesthetics of domesticity with aesthetics of labor. And we're just trying to question different models of working together in co-working spaces that I jokingly made a fake co-working set that was made of nothing but kinfolk images, which is like the epitome of image culture and lifestyle, and thinking of data as a medium, everything from furniture to its environment. And people believed us, me, that they believed us so much that we launched a company called Renting Cool. It's real. This is one idea of a space where it is just one big continuous meeting and in one big continuous meeting room, so you can say, sorry, I'm in a meeting, to all the obligations you're perpetually trying to avoid. This is literally just a cat cafe. And that really got exhausted quickly, and we wanted to question what is co-working and when does it work, and trying to think of it in a more sincere way than the cynical approach that we took initially. So if the hearth is a site of a community, then the architect is kind of the one who stokes it. And so how to work alone together, and together alone under one house, and what's the architect's role in that? And I've really been just like playing with these two modes: architecting, ironic, and sincere. Yeah, you can read that. And next month we'll actually be launching our first community meeting with Talk Show. If you don't know them, look them up. The working title is The Art of House Maintenance, or How to Work Together. And if you're interested, reach out to me.
Everyone's amazing, and we're only halfway through. With that, maybe we take a little bit of a break, 15 minutes. It's 2:20 right now. We'll gather again at 2:30, 2:35. Yeah? Yeah. Oh, you want to move yours to the end? I was thinking, but it worked pretty well because we didn't have to do a lot of crazy setup, so we could just go straight to you. Okay, cool. I'll go to Yeah. Okay, cool. That's great idea.
With your folded arms and history books, you glance into the eyes of Madame Joy. And you think you found the bag. You're getting weaker and your knees begin to sag. In a corner playing dominoes and drag. The one and only Madame Joy. Look from outside the frosty window wraps. She jumps up and says, Lord have mercy, I think that it's the cops. Drops everything she got down into the street below. And you know you gotta go on that train from Dublin up the sandy road, throwing pennies at the bridges down below, and the rain, hail, sleet, and snow. Say goodbye to Madame Joy. Dry your eyes for Madame Joy. Wonder why for Madame Joy. You forgot your glove. And the love that loves, the love that loves, the love that loves, the love that loves, to love, the love that loves, to love, the love that loves. To say goodbye to Madam Joy. Dry your eye for Madam Joy. Wonder why for Madam Joy. Dry your eye for Madam Joy. Say goodbye. In the wind and the rain on the back street. In the back street, in the back street. Say goodbye to Madam Joy. In the back street, in the back street, in the back street. Down home in the back street. Gotta go. Say goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Say goodbye. And the love that loves, the love that loves, the love that loves, to love, the love that loves, the love to love, the love that loves, to love. Say goodbye, goodbye,
'cause it made you run, trying your best just to get it round. The questions of a thousand dreams, what you do and what you see. Lover, can you talk to me?
Once I was a soldier, and I fought on foreign sands for you. Once I was a hunter, and I brought home fresh meat for you. Once I was a lover, I searched behind your eyes for you. And soon there'll be another to tell you I was just alive. And sometimes I wonder, just for a while,
Hi. If everyone could come back in and find their seat.
though you have forgotten.
All right, does everyone know the clapping trick? Clap once if you can hear me. Clap twice if you can hear me. Clap 3 times if you can hear me. All right. It works with kids. All kids, yeah, big, small, different age kids. That's a teacher trick. We got some seats if you want to sit down and feel comfortable. Oh, make sure that you also have your liquid, your water or sodas. How's everyone feeling? Good? Welcome. Yeah. We've got so many wonderful students. I'm glad that we've got, oh yeah. I'll probably, yeah. Or you could, well, yeah. Yeah. I think we have some more chairs in the back over here by Stefan. Stefan, raise your hand. Say hi. Okay, there's 2 seats over there. Olivia, we got some seats by you, yeah? There's 2 seats over by Olivia, and look at that, we're on time. Oh, that one's my seat. Yeah, there we got 2, all right. Two seats right by Olivia. All right, everybody. Welcome back. We're going to get started with our next presenter, Matilda.
Hello. I'm Matilda, or Tildy Mao is like my stage name, I guess.
I'm going to play a song for you so you can get a taste of the kind of artwork I've been doing. I feel like part of what brought me here was kind of like an extension of the effort to find more people to play music with and make music with and make anything with. I'm also in the disenchanted tech worker category, like many of the people here. All right. This song is about a similar time of exploring and going into something new. In the hall of the place by the lake, in the last moment when it feels safe, interrupted by thoughts that the calm never quite got complete and unscathed. It's time to go. I'll let you know. Very short song. So if any of you are interested in music or sound or anything to do with that, let me know. Another thing that I'm interested in, like many people here, is computers. This is a picture of one thing that I would like to know more about. I want to know more about how computers physically operate, like the physical things that happen. We abstract a lot of computer stuff, but at some point, like, there's a actual, like, thing that's happening. This is one of those things that relates to a morbid fascination that I have with crystals and everything to do with crystals. Crystals are great. This is a crystal oscillator. It has a tiny little quartz crystal in it. That's a big part of how computers keep track of time. If you, like, put a crystal under pressure, it creates some electricity at a very constant rate, and you can, like, set a clock to that, which is amazing. But also, crystals are, like, amazing in our culture right now. They're, like, a part of healing, and there's an awesome TV show featuring a superhero group called the Crystal Gems, who are, like, women from outer space who protect love and all life forms. And I want to find a way to combine all those things. I also think it's amazing that, like, there's a little crystal inside everyone's phone. And I would love to meet or maybe, like, become, like, a crystal using healer who can remind people of that. Like, you have a protective object inside your phone, even when it's off. That's, like, a part of this larger idea about crystals and their power and our fascination with them. There's also, like, there are, like, crystal prospectors in California. I live in San Francisco, so there's, like, a crystal store in every corner. So it just touches, like, every part of life and the landscape in, like, good and bad and neutral ways. And I love thinking about that. So come talk to me about that. I would love to, like, create an inventory of, like, every material in my phone and its, like, cultural and physical properties. And at SFPC, I am hoping we can create a sort of collective artist residency where we work together on a lot of stuff and could take, like, ideas like this and help people experience technology in ways they wouldn't have thought to experience it. Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name's Max. This is a picture of me from 2015 with my cat, Pippin, when he was a baby. It's very cute, looks like a puppet. This picture was taken in Rochester, New York, which is where I grew up. It's kind of interesting growing up there and then working in the tech industry because Rochester, if you don't know, was like the hub of the information technology world 30 years ago. And so companies like Xerox and Kodak were like the Google, IBM, Facebook of their day. But now I grew up kind of in the decaying carcass of that boomtown. And so that kind of colored a little bit of my cynicism, I think prepared me a little bit to live in San Francisco. I know where it's all going. So I actually love computers, and I feel like I feel pretty emotional about the way that I relate to them, and I think a lot about what a computer wants sometimes or what it wants me to do, and sometimes we disagree about that. And a lot of the time that I spend working with computers is spending a lot of time alone by myself trying to relate to other people. And so this sometimes becomes like a contradiction that causes problems. And so all the things I want to make them for people and to have some kind of communication, but I do it in a very alone way. And so that can like bite itself in the butt. It can feel kind of like having these tools that aren't meant to be doing this thing, and they keep like crushing the idea I was trying to form. So I'm going to talk about some of the projects that I've made and shared with people. One of them is a Twitter bot that tweets when the New York Times uses a word for the very first time ever. And these are a couple from this week. Counter-cartography is a very provocative word. I don't know what they're going for there. And actually, they tweeted algo rave for the first time. And so there might be some algo rave adjacent people here. You're now legitimized in the eyes of the paper of record. I bet that feels really good. And one cool thing is this bot actually got to tweet its own name. Okay, so I said that I sometimes can feel like this conflict between trying to express myself and it going wrong. And one of the ways that I've endeavored to circumvent this problem is to, instead of expressing myself through computers, but to build tools that people can express themselves through. And so there's this world of research, and these tools have been around for a long time, but they're starting to be clumped by certain people, such as Kate Compton, under the realm of like casual creativity and creative tools that are more about the pleasure of creating than about like the output. And so a lot of these tools might be familiar to you, things like the Sims character creator, where it's something that feels fun to start with, and it kind of tricks you into making things and forming opinions and playing with it. And I think this is a really good kind of play that I can get behind. So one of my takes on this is I made this little physics game called Sandspiel. Basically, there's little elements that interact and you paint with them. You can share your creations on it. People pretty much ignore the fact there's physics involved and just use it as MS Paint on the internet. And mostly middle schoolers play with it in class. There's like a forking remix kind of thing going on, and so they actually make up all these little games for each other and use this note passing thing to make like little coloring books and little prompts, and a lot of cool stuff happens on there, and it's this beautiful little world. This is a piece I really like, made by Amberly. This is another piece I like a lot. Friendly Fry is someone who's really prolific on the community. Who actually has kind of stopped posting because a lot of people have been using it and it's gotten kind of noisy and toxic on there. And there's a lot of like, I'm the only moderator, and every morning I wake up and like delete a lot of pictures, and it doesn't I don't have a really good solution. And a lot of the tools that are provided by that are accessible to me in the world of tech don't really seem like a good well suited to solving this problem the way I want to solve it. And so people are like, oh, you should use machine learning, or you should hire low paid overseas workers to moderate it. And none of those things make any sense to me, but I also don't have my own solution. And so this is just like this festering thing that I feel weird about every day when I moderate it. Failure. It's easier to talk about success than failure. So I didn't get a lot of the failure into this talk, but if you want to talk to me in person, I would love to talk to you about my failures. The last thing I want to leave you with is that I'm working on a new project. This is kind of like the mood board for it. It's called orb.farm. If any of these images give you emotional reactions, or if you ever had like a sea monkey or any kind of little pet in a little glass container when you were a kid, and you want to tell me an experience you had or share something, I'm trying to I'm trying to have not just make like a killing your fish simulator game. I want it to be a little more positive. So let me know if you want to talk about this. I'd love to talk to you. Or if you have solutions for ways to organize like online creative spaces of little kids. It's really hard. They don't like me. That's all. Thank you for listening. Next, Max.
Hi. I'm the other Max. Like many today, I'm going to talk to you about some questions I have, but also some questions I keep getting asked. I'm also going to give you, for free, the #1 trick to being a great writer. You all weren't excited enough about that, so here it is on fire. I am a writer. I mostly write novels. I sometimes write essays, and I'm an editor at a literary magazine. This is a picture of a book I wrote. You might notice this copy was set on fire by me, which is pretty representative of how writers feel about their own work. I've also been really interested and frustrated by this question. If you think y'all are critical of technology, you should hang out with non-computational poets and book editors. How should and can technology be a part of literary spaces? And over the past few years, I've done projects that explore that. This was a prototype for a space that visually reacted to the reading of poetry. Here, I'm interested in a similar question that I've also been really frustrated and confused by, which is how can literature be a part of a technology or art space? And part of the reason I think I'm so challenged by that question is that book people tend to stay in their own world. And it's this sort of opaque, inaccessible, mystical thing for how a book, particularly a novel, gets made. And I want to try to figure out how to change that. And I'm going to try to do it right now. And I'm going to do that by talking about the questions I'm asked the most. So one of them is, did you always know you wanted to be a writer? And the answer is no. If you'd known me when I was a teenager or in college, you would have seen this person, someone obsessed with skateboarding and DJing. No one would have said that I was going to be a novelist or a published author, ever. When people ask me this, some of the time, they're really asking this: is it too late for me to become a writer? And the answer to that is absolutely not. I could fill this entire talk with examples of people who started writing late in life. Shout out to Toni Morrison. Another question I get a lot is, how did you become a writer? And sometimes people mean, how can I become a writer? And this is where writing is weird and different than almost everything else. I have a friend who teaches art at Columbia, and I said, what would happen if someone came to you saying, I want to learn to draw? What would you tell them? And she said, well, draw a lot. With music, I have a friend who teaches music, and I said, I want to learn how to play an instrument. They said, practice playing that instrument. Writing isn't like that. There's a lot of really great writers who didn't write very much, who didn't have much of what you'd call a practice, but they all share one thing in common. Do you know what it is? They read. They read a ton. So how did I become a writer? Let's go back to those photos. Notice anything? I'm skateboarding around the books. I spent my entire childhood and adolescence preparing for the life I had now without knowing it. So there it is. There's the #1 trick. Guaranteed to make you a great writer. Read. Read a ton. And believe it or not, that's all the foundation you need. And the last question I want to talk about with, which might inspire you to think that this might be valuable to you, is this question. Why do you write novels? And I'm specifically going to talk about novels. And one answer is, when politicians are asked why they believe what they believe about the world, they have this weird habit of citing novels, for better and for worse. AOC has talked about 100 Years of Solitude. Barack Obama talks about Marilyn Robbins so much he did a podcast with her. Steve Bannon talks about the horrifically racist novel The Camp of the Saints. Paul Ryan will not shut up about Atlas Shrugged. Words are weapons. And novels specifically are time weapons. You can reach forward in time and influence an entire worldview. And the reason I want to say this in this space is that I believe there's probably more than one great book inside someone here. And all you need to do to get it out is spend a ton of time reading. And then one day, you might notice yourself reading and seeing the strings being pulled in what those authors are doing. And that's really all you need. And it's not that you owe it to yourself to find out if you're a writer. It's that you owe it to all of us. You should just double check and make sure that you're not Haruka Murakami or Toni Morrison, because if you are, we should know about that. The last thing I'll say is, real quick, the magazine I'm an editor for is very interested in starting to publish interactive projects. We're trying to figure out how a literary magazine should interface with technology. So if anyone ever has pitches for things like that, things that might not exist in any other space, I would love to hear about them. And if anyone wants to try writing for the first time, I'm very emailable. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Slides. Thank you. Hello. I'm Natalie. Take a moment and just look around the room. Take a breath. All right. Hello, I'm Natalie. And still, I really want to talk to you about jellyfish. But instead, I'm going to talk to you about myself. So, I hail from sunny Sacramento, California, which is known for Lady Bird, the best basketball team of 2002. If you're a Lakers fan, I don't want to talk about it, and all the reasons I wanted to run away. Today I'm going to talk about 5 things that start with P. I'll share some of the things I've done in those P categories, and then some questions I have in them. The first is pottery. I quit my job at some point in time, and I decided to take up pottery. It's a nicer story to imagine that this was because I really just wanted to make things with my hands, but the reality was that I was invited to 10 weddings that year, and I just really needed gifts. So I just thought I would make them. I look at this picture of myself, and it gives me lots of feels because I didn't plan it, but I feel there's a bit of contentment in it, and there's a bit of quiet, and that quiet is hard to find these days. And so pottery for me has been an exercise in getting to know myself and giving that self to other people through gift. I call my pottery practice Snap Crackle Pots. Nobody wants snapped, cracked, or some people want pot. And it has taught me a lot about impermanence. That plate on your right, probably I spent 5 hours making, and then it arrived to me in this form that was both completely cracked but not yet broken. And I think there's a lot of poetry in even the failures and the mistakes. Here's some of my work. Oh, who said, "Aw, that was so sweet, thank you." One question I have is, can I make computers and clay be friends with each other? The second P is people. I think actually a lot about my artistic practice as being about getting people in a room and making them do weird shit together and then asking them how it went and what we learned from that process. Here's some things I've done in the past. Every year I run a vision setting exercise with 20 people who identify as women in my living room. They also identify as women outside my living room, I think. And we get together in the same space, we share food together, and then we talk about where are we going, and how do we help each other get there. It's been a really moving practice for me. I also run, this year I've run a series of dinner experiments called Capio, and the basic idea is that people are terrible at talking to each other. And so I thought maybe if we had a central theme for a given dinner and your only purpose was to show up, eat the food I made for you, and then share a personal story about that theme, over time, if I made you commit to 6 months of this, which I did, you would actually start talking to each other. And I also think a lot about leadership. I run my own coaching practice, and I don't know about y'all, but I don't really like leaders that look a lot like that. And so I've been thinking a lot about what's my version of leadership, what's y'all's version? Here's some questions I have about leadership. How do we actually like feel good working together? What are models of leadership that don't suck? Why'd I date that one person? The third category is paradox. I love paradoxes. I don't even know if I know what a paradox is for the math people in the room, but it doesn't matter because the nice thing about paradoxes is that you can have both things at the same time. I ran this party once called a paradox party, and what people were required to do was we picked a paradox like angry joy, and then we came up with as many representations of how we could express that, whether that was in food, or that was in writing, or that was in limericks. I love a good limerick. Let me know if you want to make a limerick together. So I like to think about what's possible in the land of both, where it's not just one thing. And in fact, actually, the connection of two things together makes them more juicy. My fourth category is pleasure. I've spent a lot of time in the last couple years thinking about what does it mean to want something, to feel desire, to actually have a somatic experience of yumminess. And so I don't have an art practice. I actually have a daily pleasure practice. It's 5 minutes of doing something that actually feels good. And it took me a really long time to actually know how that felt. I also like doing things like the opposite of a deadlift, which I call an alive lift, because exercise makes me feel really alive. Here's some questions I have about pleasure. And the last category is transformation, which doesn't start with a P, but now it does. And I don't know what that looks like for me. Maybe there's a now 0.0, though every time I look at this, I see meow, which is cool. And I'm really interested in how we become different versions of ourselves. Not in the same way of like capitalistic, you're not good enough and you should become something else and let me sell something to you, but in the way of like, how did I get to where I am now that's different, absolutely different from where I was before? And here are some of those questions. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name's Olivia. This is my name, but even bigger than that. And I am 18 years old, and the crisis of my teenage life so far has been negotiating my relationship with technology. Aside from applying to college, that's also been a crisis. These are some things that I made when I was in high school. I spent most of my time doing computer science and screwing around because I didn't like software engineering, and I also didn't like capitalism. But there was an expectation that my computer science education would result in an intersection of those two things. So I'm really glad that I'm here, because it feels like an intersection of the things at the whole opposite side of that spectrum. I'm a little different from most of the people in this room. I'm 18, which means the internet has been around for my entire life. I don't know the world without it. So I'm seeking coexistence. I also don't have an art practice yet. I am 18, so this presentation was so hard for me, and I decided instead of an art practice, I would share with you all my art questions. So first things first, I have a bit of a secret to share with you all. Technology makes me feel really, really scared and paranoid sometimes. But I actually don't think that's a secret. I think a few of us here also feel that way. So I'm really interested in thinking about how we talk about that with each other and how do we heal that with each other. I'm also interested in fake stuff and claiming ownership of all our fake stuff, all the artifacts of our interactions on the internet and stuff like that. I'm interested in making my own fake stuff and thinking about who's creating all the fake stuff on the internet, who's controlling the metaphors, who gets to pick the narratives that we tell ourselves about cyberspace, who's creating the style guide for the internet. I want to make fake stuff too, right? Fuck your story. I want to make a story as well. I think about Wi-Fi and the divine and Tabitha Désir, and I think about the commodification of spirituality in selling computers to us, and how when you boot up your computer, it makes a doo-doo sound, and it's trying to convince you that you're going from your plane of existence to a better plane, when you're really connecting to somebody else's server, and they're just telling you ideas, right? I think about blackness and computability a lot. I think about undersea networks and how there isn't actually a cloud. And for 17 of my 18 years, a bunch of different companies were really invested in using capital and money to convince me that there was a cloud. I think about fugitive technologies and the technologies of the people who I care about, who've taught me how to adapt to the world that I live in, about these survival technologies, of thinking about the aesthetics of urgency and about the transformativeness of tension, and the transformative power of living on the borders, right? What you can see when you're standing at the edge. And I do want to add a quick shout out to all of the people who have given me space to grow and cultivated my conspiracy theories. Nema here of Radical Love Consciousness. Shout out to Tayoon and Distributed Web of Care. Shout out to Black Girl Magic, the collective, and Zay over there, who's going to give a talk later. And shout out to Bias Forest Bufu, one of the RTAs. Sige is one of the co-founding members. For the next 10 weeks, I am very, very interested in making fake stuff about electronics and madness and paranoia and blackness, and if anyone has ideas about that, let's link and build. You can follow me around here.
Hello. My name is Shelby. I am a software engineer currently. My academic background is in computer science and Russian language and culture, which brings me to my first project that I'd like to share that began with this email from my mom in 2013. The attachment was this book, which is a set of Russian weaving patterns from 1912. Looked something like this. This was written 5 years before a reform of Russian orthography, which meant that there are letters that are no longer used, there are different spellings and different syntax. So I translated a few for her, sent them to her, and at some point I decided that I would translate all of them for her. For context, this is the kind of loom that these patterns are written for, which I did not know anything about. So this is what the translation ended up looking like. I also needed to transcribe it since the original document was a PDF. I couldn't just copy and paste. And I ended up constructing a glossary of weaving terms, since a lot of the vocabulary in this was very specific and technical to weaving. So a few years later, as I was becoming more interested in data visualization, I decided that an interesting exercise might be to reverse engineer these swatches of fabric from these patterns, which are broken up into 3 pieces. So I encoded them as binary, which looks something like this. And then I built an interface. So the underlying binary is what is driving the 3 different parts of the pattern. The on-offs determine which parts of the warp is visible, whether the warp is on, invisible, or it's off, which is when it's hidden behind the weft. Here's another example. And then another part of this was creating an editable interface so that a user could actually go in and edit and play around with the patterns. So again, these swatches are generated dynamically as you play with these. So I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm a member of a wonderful tech-based arts collective called Verve. We get asked a question that I think we get asked a lot about SFPC, which is, what is it? So as part of the answer to that, we sent out a survey, aka Verve, to the members in the group and asked a very open-ended question, what are you? The answers ranged from artist, waveform is one of the more interesting ones, calligrapher, engineer, developer. And you can see commonalities and differences in the group. We also asked what your vocation is, what you do professionally, versus your avocation, which is what you're passionate about. And you can see shifting priorities there. We also love to collaborate. So we asked what projects you've worked on with different people. Part of this was an effort to map and bring visibility into the wide range of talents within the group for further collaboration. A future goal is to extend this to the larger Austin community and the different networks there. I'd also love to extend it to this group of people. And finally, some things that I'm interested in exploring while I'm here at SFPC. I've been thinking a lot about inertia, momentum, and potential as they relate to each other, as we negotiate the 3 of those things ourselves, independently and interpersonally. over different durations of time, short-term, long-term. Also been interested in waste, time, energy, resources, e-waste, food, where our priorities lie and why. And finally, usefulness, with a lot of quotes around that, because we have been conditioned by a lot of systems to think of this in a very specific, narrow way. So I am excited to make some things that are not useful while I'm here under that definition. Thank you.
I forgot to tell you, we have a loom, a little tiny toy loom back there that we'll have to play with later. Yeah. All right, thank you. Yay, Yuzu!
Hi guys, my name is Yuju, and I'm an artist and a software engineer. I write fictions and poetries, but Max, I'm not a writer. I like to think of myself as a maker of poetic systems. And so just this weekend, somebody asked me what is the poetics of technology. I want to bring your attention to the very origin of the word poetics, which is a Greek word meaning to make. So I make poetic systems that runs on its own, and they create iterations on their own, and that they're meant to be seen but not to be read. So for example, this project that I created called You're My House, I want to talk about the language, the human language and computer language. So the executability of the computer language versus the repetition of the human language that I'm using in this work. Creating this poem or house that's being constructed while demolished. So I have one of my favorite professors telling me that all my works are super romantic, which is also something that I think about a lot. The word romantic in this our modern world understanding versus romantic movements, and what is romantic in terms of technology. I am also very obsessed with NASA. So when the Opportunity rover sent the message, my battery is low and it's getting dark, I made this poem for the Opportunity rover, where this is also a performance piece. So I'm speaking through the webcam, and then the video has a facial tracker which controls the change of the text. So when I try to read the text, it sort of creates this very frustration because I couldn't read it and I have to try to read it. Ended up creating this human glitch. The more interesting thing is that when I'm trying to read the text on the computer is actually also trying to read me. So once again, going back to me not being a writer, this is a collaboration work with one of my friends, and the work originally was just a written piece that I couldn't finish. But a piece was meant to be written in 3 different genres about the same story, so it's sort of like written in 3 different perspectives. So I couldn't finish the piece, and I was in our school's hackathon with friends, and we were trying to create a piece about perspectives and space. And I ended up using my piece as the material, and we created this augmented reality project that is a text object, and people walk through it. And I want to talk about the point of view in cyberspace with this project. So in the cyberspace, your point of view is no longer just looking through a window and seeing the things that are changing, but it becomes your own consciousness, and you're walking through the cyberspace with your consciousness and looking at the work from thousands of perspectives, as many as you can explore. So you guys probably noticed all my works are super conceptual, which is how I was trained as an artist. So I really wanted to talk about technology more critically, and that is why I'm here. And just from knowing all of the people in a cohort, I'm really excited, and I think I'm going to learn a lot from every one of you guys. Thank you.
Hi everyone. So my name is Zainab Aliou. I go mononymously by Zay. So because my first name starts with Z and my last name starts with A, anytime you go alphabetically, I'm either the very first person or the very last person. So I'm happy to close us out today. Okay, cool. So like any other child of a diaspora, the question of where I am from is pretty layered. So because in diaspora, you have to learn to make home in different places. I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, but my family moved to UK to escape some military violence in the 60s. So I spent my childhood kind of disparately between the UK and Nigeria, and then eventually we immigrated to New York, the Bronx actually, when I was 8 or so. So in the same way that my mother moved us to America in the mythos of the American dream, I kind of sought the internet actually as this community and this technology when I was younger, just for this kind of stability that I wasn't used to growing up. So for me, cyberspace was a site of potential, not tied to any geographical bounds. It was through the internet that I learned how to visually communicate and with computers, and it's where I wrote my first lines of code. But I'm not going to talk about any of this today. But I did go to school, graduated a couple of years ago. I studied design and HCI at Carnegie Mellon. So in retrospect, I had come across some systems on the internet that I didn't quite have the words for or the language for when I was younger. But now I understand super clearly that the internet, like many technologies of today, really replicate systems of violence that exist in our material world. So the military complex of a school like Carnegie Mellon that I graduated from is the exact same military complex that started the internet in the first place. And it's the same complex that really has the same value systems of the big tech companies that we see today. So I spent a lot of my time interrogating my proximity to these techno-solutionist organizations while also thinking a lot about the entanglement of these systems that generate power and control. So while at SFPC, I hope to deepen my understanding of these computational and hardware technologies and systems because I believe that understanding their design infrastructure will not only help me better critique them, but I want to be able to subvert them and co-dream up alternate ecologies of love and care in their place. So while in Pittsburgh at school, I was also supporting local organizing around racial and economic justice in the local Pittsburgh area. I became really frustrated with my design education and the trope that often plagues the design industry and the discipline of design, where a small group of people are really distanced from the affect of what they put out into these communities. So much of the work I do today is centered around community because, in my opinion, and what I believe strongly is that the power of our relationships to one another is really the most transformative part of being. So I'm interested in designing community participatory things rather than me as an expert of design. So I'm thinking more about design as facilitation rather than I'm coming in just shipping stuff, out into the world. So while I was in Pittsburgh in school, before I had graduated and moved back to New York, I worked with a local Pittsburgh community organization called the Center of Life. We kind of worked together to think about how we can design tools for the community. We wanted to leverage spatial storytelling to expose how losses affect the identity of a community and how in the aftermath of loss, memory of place changes over time. We wanted to create these long-lasting intergenerational tools that the community could really have vulnerable conversations and intimate and informed conversations about these social, racial, and economic things that were happening. We wanted to do this so that the community, and just being part of the community, we can collectively engage in direct action that will help better the future of the community. I'm also part of a collective in New York called Backroom Magic. Thanks, Olivia, for shouting us out. Literally, tears dropped down my eyes. So our coming together was really born out of our experiences with the embodied affect of displacement of our peoples and our lineages. Our collective work is really focused around community building, and it materializes in a variety of ways I won't really go into because time is of the essence. So really we kind of speak through a Black feminist thought lens and a Pan-African lens. So kind of in grappling with our erasure and kind of the erasure of our cultures as part of this larger carceral apparatus, collective memory and communal care become really, really important vectors in building trust. So we kind of view our bodies as systems, as archives, as sites of memory. So we want to organize these spaces of kind of intimacy and fugitivity so that we know that for people who are over-surveilled and underserved, we can really create spaces for one another. This is actually hilarious that I am running out of time because we're going to talk about time right now. We really are. So more recently, we've been drawing upon narratives, practices, and technologies from both nature and our ancestors in an effort to really understand technology outside of this imperial lens. We want to be able to not only think about things outside of an imperial lens, but really kind of actually maintain our culture, preserve our erased and often co-opted cultures. So we're inspired by, I'll go really quickly, I already talked really fast, but here we go. So we're inspired by things like mycelium, which is this underground network of fungi. We think about the spaces we're creating as really a mycelium of sorts. Also thinking about how ant colonies retain the collective memory of their ancestors that outlast the spans of one single ant dying. And also in thinking about programming around, or deprogramming rather, around ancestral altars, thinking about this as like a figurative pathway to imagining alternate futures, we're considering what we can learn from nature and indigenous technologies embedded in principles of care. So what does it mean to move at the speed of nature or trust rather than the speed of Western time? So the relationship between past, present, and future becomes this nonlinear way of looking at experiencing life that is divergent from Western ideals of progress. So these counter-narratives are what I'm really interested in reminding us that although one dominant narrative might really take over society at one time, there are and have always been alternate ways of being. One last slide, sorry. So I want to end by sharing that yesterday I actually went out with a few friends, Galen included. We went to this poetry reading by a really dope writer and professor named Fred Moten. He's done a lot of work theorizing around learning commons and Black studies. So he actually quoted this French philosopher, Jean-Francois Lyotard, or something super French, in saying, resistance is making yourself into a conductive thread. And that really stuck with me because like being in a space like this, I really think that the most transformative learning someone can do is unlearning. Like for me, I'm still unlearning generations of systemic conditioning. And I don't think about programming as much as I think about deprogramming, honestly. But I hope that, and I actually put this in my application, poetic computation to me is an active resistance against these utilitarian notions of efficiency and progress and time that often replicate structures of domination. But really I hope, and I'm really excited to be with all of you because I'm excited to create this learning commons of study where we can creatively harness this resistance with one another through generosity, curiosity, and openness, and we can support one another in harnessing really our collective bodies of knowledge to rebuild this world with care because we are the future ancestors. But thank you, everyone.
So, I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to check something really fast because I've been getting messages from Gia, but I know. But so I'll try to refresh and see. It's really hard, because here's the thing. Everybody is awesome and amazing, and 5 minutes is really not enough time to get to know everybody fully. Let's see if we can find Gia in this. Oh, by the way, we were taking bets on how many slides there were. Yeah? Yeah, so you guys sat through 500 slides. That's a lot of slides. I think we're going to tell Gia that we're sorry, but maybe we can do, yeah? I have a feeling, I don't think that, yeah? Is there? We got it? All right. I don't know how, though, we're going to get Gia to talk. Does someone have Gia's phone number? Yes. Can you call? Can you Slack call? Do you know how to do that from the Slack thing right here? Let's see. Oh, wait. Right. No? Here, you show me. Yeah? We have technology. Let's see. Also, while we're waiting on this, I have a question, especially for the students, because I was a student, I went through this, and I was always like a little bit amazing to see your cohort in a bit of a different light. You guys have been spending some of you 2 weeks together now. Has this been a bit of a transformative experience? Yeah? Are there new questions you have for each other? Are there new things you might want to work on now that you've seen them present for 5 minutes? Yeah?
She's very quiet.
Yeah? Oh. She's on the side. Mm-hmm.
But she's there. And also the Wi-Fi sucks.
Hey, you here? Oh, wait. Some of you 2 weeks together now. Wait, hold on 1 second. I'm going to turn this off and on.
You can also call from your laptop, from desktop. If you want.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But it sounds like it might be her being quiet. I don't know.
I think. What did you say? What? Huh? Yeah? Can we hear you? Okay. Hold on. I'm going to try to call from my laptop. Okay, while we're doing this, I'm going to ask you guys to popcorn again things that now you want to learn with your fellow students that maybe you didn't think of before.
I'd really like to create some installation spaces that we can either present or just inhabit together. I think we could benefit from that and have some fun.
Hi, Lauren.
Take it away, Gia.
Can you hear me? Yes. Hi, everyone.
All right.
Okay.
Gia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you
All right, get
loud
going.
and clear.
I'll drive the slide. How about that?
I love it. Okay, so slide 1, as you know, I'm Gia. We can go to the next slide, Lauren. That's okay. Well, I worked for a long time as a transmedia storyteller. And we can go to the next one. And I am also an activist at Chicas Poderosas, which is a global community of women in media that makes skill sharing events to take our careers to the next level, like online safety workshops for journalists and activists. And we also make international investigations to put underrepresented stories in media outlets and create a more inclusive agenda to make our governments accountable, which is so necessary here in Latin America. And I would like to learn more about anonymity in virtual spaces for hacktivism, for example. So if there are any tour fans tonight or, well, today, please reach out because I'd love to know everything about its architecture and use. And we can go to the next slide. And also, I am part of a crew of amazing girls who are Chicas Programando, which is a community of women developers here also. And we aim to make tech projects and organizations in Argentina particularly more diverse. And for example, this weekend that I'm here in Buenos Aires, we did a workshop about web accessibility. And it was so, as Libby would say, and I would certainly love to learn more about accessibility and its applications in museums or art installations or their policies. And we can go to the next one. And I also like art a lot. I paint and I delved into a digital artist. And this year I'm working on my first art installation, which is using biometric sensors and trying to get to know computers and new languages. So we can go to the next one, Lauren. So I made a wish and I wanted a place or a safe space where I could work between my transmedia storyteller self and my hacktivist self and my artist self. And I applied to SFPC, and we can go to the next one. And this is also because I saw all your presentations, and Max also used Vimo, and I relate a lot with Max because we are both super sensible. So I got into SFPC, which made me really, really happy. It's like a dream come true. And also something that I would really love to enjoy, and I've been noticing this first week that we've been together, is that it's hard for me to be so lonely in such a big city. And it's amazing to have people like you on my way doing this. And also with Tayun classes and what we have been doing now about silence. For me, you know me, and I'm super energetic and always jumping around, and I'm like a toddler in this adult's body. And for me, silence is something that it's not very common, and I will learn a lot about that. And we can go to the last slide, which is that what I would really, really, really expect SFPC to be is, of course, to start working between my transmedia storyteller and hacktivist and artist self, but also to learn a lot about access to information and think critically about human and computer interactions, and also how human behaviors change when we interact with other humans through computers. And I would love to do it together and to do it collaboratively and as a community, as I am used to do it here at home with all the practices that I do. So I'm happy that we made it, Lauren. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gia. And thank all of you for being patient and for letting us try to work through the technology. Students, you guys have class at 10 a.m.
I'll be there.
All right. Gia can be there. You can be there. Thank you, everyone else, for coming, and we'll see you at the end of the semester. And then everyone should get to hang out and know each other a little bit more. This is nice. Enjoy your Sunday. Yeah.